He slept near a bus station with nothing but a plastic bag. One small act of kindness changed everything. What happened next built a billion-dollar empire no one saw coming. Before we dive into this incredible story, do not forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our powerful, life-changing content. I remember the smell of wet cardboard and burnt coffee. It clung to my jacket like a second skin. The alley behind the bus station felt narrower that night. Neon lights flickered like tired eyes. My stomach twisted as a bus roared past, shaking the ground beneath my feet. I had nothing, no home, no job, no plan that felt real. The cold crept through my shoes and into my bones. I pressed my palms together and felt the roughness of my own skin. That texture told me I was still here, still breathing, still capable of trying. A plastic bag held everything I owned, a notebook. A pen, a photo of my mother smiling on a summer porch. Her eyes had always seen more in me than I could see in myself. I sat on the curb and listened to the city, sirens in the distance. Laughter spilling from a late diner, the hum of life continuing without me. That sound hurt more than hunger. It felt like being invisible. I closed my eyes and promised myself one more morning. Just one footstep stopped in front of me. The smell of soap replaced the alley air. I looked up and saw a man in a gray coat holding 2 cups. Steam rose between us like a fragile bridge. He handed me one without a word. Our fingers brushed. The cup was warm. That warmth traveled fast. It reached my chest. He sat beside me and stared at the street. The coffee tasted bitter and perfect. He said his name was Thomas. He said he ran a small warehouse nearby. He said he had slept in his car once. He said he remembered the sound of hunger. Those words landed softly. Like a blanket placed with care. He asked what I loved to do. I laughed at first. The sound surprised me. I said I loved building things, ideas, systems, ways to make work easier. Thomas nodded as if I had offered gold. He asked me to come by the warehouse in the morning. He said there was honest work and fair pay. I watched him walk away. The night felt less sharp. Morning arrived with pale light and sore muscles. I stood in front of a dented metal door. The warehouse smelled of oil and dust. Machines clanked and hummed. My heart raced as if I were about to step on stage. Thomas handed me gloves. The fabric scratched my palms. The work was hard. Boxes lifted, numbers counted, mistakes corrected. Days turned into weeks. I learned every corner of that place. I listened. I asked questions. I stayed late to fix problems no one had named yet. Thomas noticed. He gave me a desk made from plywood. He gave me trust. That trust changed my posture. I stood taller. I spoke clearer. I slept better. I sketched ideas at night in my notebook. Better routes, smarter tracking. Ways to save time and money. Thomas listened again. We tested one idea, then another. The warehouse breathed easier. Orders moved faster. Clients smiled. A small company grew. Pain followed growth. Long nights, doubts that tasted like metal. A bank meeting that ended with polite smiles and empty hands. I walked outside into harsh sunlight. My ears rang. The city felt loud and indifferent again. My chest tightened. For a moment the alley returned. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Maria, our dispatcher. She thanked me for believing in her when no one else did. She said her mother was sick and the job saved them. I sat on the steps and breathed. The shock passed through me like a wave. I realized the work mattered. People mattered. We kept going. We failed publicly. We learned loudly. We hired carefully. We paid fairly. We shared profits when times were good. Years folded into each other. Warehouses multiplied. Software replaced clipboards. A reporter asked about overnight success. I smiled at the lie inside that phrase. I thought of cardboard and coffee. I thought of Thomas and the warm cup. I thought of the hands that reached out without keeping score. The day the valuation crossed $1 billion, I stood alone in a glass office. Sunlight spilled across the floor. The city stretched beneath me. My hands trembled. The same hands that once held a plastic bag. A knock came at the door. Thomas stepped in, older now, eyes bright. He held the same kind of cup. Steam rose between us again. I felt the room tilt with memory and gratitude. He began to speak as the noise of the city surged upward and my heart pounded. Because in that moment I understood that everything I was about to become depended on what I chose to say next, and how I chose to carry the kindness forward as I reached for the handle and opened the door to a future that was already moving toward me with steady, unstoppable force. And I took a breath and stepped into it, knowing that the work was not finished, and the promise I made on that cold night was still unfolding as I lifted my eyes and saw the people waiting, ready, hopeful. And I felt the same warmth return as I began to tell them that this was only the beginning, and that together we were about to build something even bigger, because the real empire had always been about people. And the next choice rested in my hands as I moved forward and reached out to the team standing in the hallway. Their faces carried trust. That weight felt heavier than any box I had lifted years ago. I stepped forward and the glass walls reflected a man I barely recognized, not because of success. Because of responsibility. The room smelled of fresh paint and coffee. Monitors glowed softly. Phones buzzed with quiet urgency. I cleared my throat and felt the echo in my chest. My voice shook at first, then it settled. I spoke about the alley, about hunger, about the cup of coffee that saved a night. Eyes softened, someone wiped a tear. I told them growth meant nothing without care. I told them numbers were empty without names behind them. A sudden alarm rang from the operations floor, sharp, unexpected. My heart jumped. Screens flashed red, a major system outage, orders frozen, clients waiting. The room tightened with tension, the air felt thick, my palms grew damp. This was the moment, the kind that decided futures. I remembered the plywood desk, the notebook pages filled with hope. I raised my hand, the noise slowed. I asked everyone to breathe, one breath together, then another. I assigned roles calmly. Clear steps, shared trust. Maria moved fast, engineers leaned in. Voices overlapped with purpose, not fear. Minutes stretched like hours, sweat traced my spine. The hum of machines returned gradually. Green lights blinked back to life. A soft cheer rippled through the room. Relief washed over us. I closed my eyes for a second. The shock lingered, then transformed into certainty. We were ready for what came next. I looked out the window again. The city no longer felt indifferent. It felt alive, waiting. And as I turned back to the people who believed in me, who had carried pain and kindness together, I felt the story still opening, still asking more of me. Still pulling me forward into moments not yet written. As the noise of work resumed, and I stepped deeper into the day knowing the hardest test had only just revealed itself and everything ahead depended on how I chose to meet it. As the doors opened and another challenge walked in, and I lifted my head to face it without looking away. Without looking away, the new challenge arrived with a quiet knock. A young man stood there, shoulders tense. His suit looked borrowed. His eyes carried fear I knew too well. He said a supplier had collapsed overnight, thousands of jobs at risk, families behind every number. The room went still. The shock hit my chest like cold water. I felt the old alley return for a heartbeat, the smell, the silence. I steadied myself on the table. The wood felt solid, real. I asked him to sit. I asked him to tell the whole story. His words spilled fast, debt, broken promises, workers unpaid. I listened to every sound in his voice. The cracks mattered. I felt the weight of choice press harder now. Saving money felt easy. Saving people felt necessary. I thought of my mother's photo. Her smile never rushed judgment. I asked for files, reports stacked high, numbers blurred, my head buzzed, then patterns emerged. Hidden strengths, missed chances. I stood and paced slowly, each step measured. The carpet softened my stride. I spoke of partnership, of time instead of pressure, of shared risk. The faces around me shifted from fear to focus. Plans formed quickly, resources redirected, calls placed with care. The young man watched as hope rebuilt itself inch by inch. His hands stopped shaking. Outside, clouds gathered. Rain tapped the windows like a warning or a blessing. I felt both. As hours passed, fatigue crept in. My back ached, my eyes burned. Yet my heart felt steady. We moved together, not as a company, as people. When the rain eased, light broke through the clouds. It spilled across the room in pale gold. I caught my reflection again. Still imperfect, still learning, still driven by that first warm cup. The phones kept ringing, decisions kept coming, each one asking who I truly was now. And as I reached for the next file, aware that every choice would echo far beyond these walls, I felt the story pulling forward again, deeper into effort and care. Into moments where comfort would never be guaranteed. Where the true cost of kindness would be tested again and again. As I drew a slow breath and prepared to meet whatever waited just beyond the door that was already beginning to open once more. Once more, the door opened wider and voices spilled in, urgent, low, controlled. A market alert flashed across the main screen, prices dropping fast, partners panicking. The room filled with sharp breaths, the floor vibrated with footsteps rushing past. I felt a pulse in my ears. The sound reminded me of nights when sleep refused to come. I closed my eyes for 1 second. I listened inward. Fear wanted speed. Wisdom wanted patience. I chose patience. I asked for silence. It came slowly, like a tide pulling back. I asked for facts only. Clear numbers, clear timelines. The air smelled of warm electronics and coffee gone cold. I rolled my shoulders and felt the weight lift slightly. This was familiar discomfort. The kind that shapes people, a memory surfaced of my first paycheck, small, folded carefully, shared with someone who needed it more than I did. That choice had changed me. This one could change thousands. I pointed to the screen and traced a path with my finger. A pause in expansion, a focus on stability, protection for workers first. Murmurs rippled through the room. Not doubt, respect. Thomas watched quietly from the corner. His nod grounded me. We moved fast but not reckless. Calls went out. Promises were weighed before spoken. The tension shifted into motion. I felt sweat cool on my skin. Outside, the city lights flickered on one by one. Each window held a story. Each story mattered. As the night deepened, exhaustion pressed harder. Yet resolve stood firmer. I leaned against the desk and felt the grain beneath my fingertips. Solid, earned. The noise of the office blended into a steady rhythm. Work, care, purpose. And as another report landed in my hands, heavier than the last, I sensed the moment stretching again, balancing on a fragile edge where one wrong move could undo years of trust and effort. And I lifted my eyes toward the glowing screens, knowing the next decision would demand even more than I believed I had. As the story pushed forward into deeper tests and unanswered questions that refused to slow down and waited for me to step fully into them. I took a long breath and made the call, not the easiest one, the right one. We chose people over panic. We chose patience over pride. Some profits disappeared. Some nights stayed long. Yet no families were left behind. The storm passed slowly, like all real storms do. Months later, the numbers recovered. Trust returned faster, stronger than before. The young man who once stood shaking at my door now led a thriving division. Maria laughed more often. Thomas retired quietly, proud and peaceful. One evening, I walked past the bus station again. The neon light still flickered. The air still smelled of coffee and rain. I placed a small cafe there. Warm cups, open doors, no questions asked. I stood across the street and watched strangers help strangers. I felt full in a way money never provides. I understood then what the empire truly was, not buildings, not valuation. But the invisible chain of kindness passed forward. I had started with nothing but breath and hope. I ended with purpose. The morals stayed simple and clear. Hard work builds success. But kindness gives it meaning. And when you lift others during your hardest moments, life finds a way to lift you higher than you ever planned. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it touched your heart, please share it and leave a comment below. Someone out there needs to hear this today. Let them know you are never alone.